from the Pathway Studios in Johnston proper. You are live from the Path.
And you're listening to Live from the Path. We're going from the Pathway Studios here in Johnston proper.
Yes. A Spanish of a word.
Son.
It
You're
means
looking
son.
up a Spanish translation.
Well,
of the
here's the deal. So, I missed last week because I was out of town working.
Yeah.
And the place that I was working at was in El Paso, Texas.
Oh.
And right across the street from the place I was working was a drive-in adult theater.
Oh, good.
And I thought,
Drive-in, like a big outside.
yeah,
line?
yeah,
No kidding.
yeah,
Whoa.
big outside like a drive-in movie theater,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Like
yeah.
except for it's an adult theater.
Oh, man.
And it's like, it says, drive-in adult theater. We open at whatever this time, and we sell cigarettes. I'm like, oh, I guess the drive-in adult business is not enough that you got to sell smokes too. So anyway, I'm like, man, why is this stuff? I mean, honestly, it's like out in the open. You're like, this is weird.
Yeah.
I don't even know how you're keeping kids from peering over here or whatever. And like, I'll be hot dog that the Del Sol Church didn't build a building right next to it. I'm like, I love these guys.
Wait, you think that one came second?
Oh, for sure. This drive-in adult theater looks like it's been there since the 70s, and Del Sol looks like they ain't had a building up for 5-10 years.
Okay, nice.
Yeah, so like they did, and the reason I know that is because they're both Pokestops, and so if you're out there catching the Pokemons, you can, which I didn't pay attention to, by the way. So like you spin the disc and you get like gifts or whatever if you're playing the Pokemons, and churches always have them. And then so the Del Sol Church had one, and then so did the adult movie theater, and so I wasn't paying attention and spun that one, and so now I have like a gift from the Del Sol or from the adult movie theater that I got to make sure I don't send to anybody. So it'd be real awkward.
Yeah, that is. I don't know anything about this Poke business.
Oh, the Pokemon Go?
Yeah.
Here's the thing. I'm always trying to find a way that like I can interact with like kids in our youth group, or like we have the girls have some younger cousins or whatever, and like it's just a way to like touch points, right?
Yeah,
like, hey, we're whatever, I'll trade you this thing, or whatever. And so
Yeah.
we started doing it. My wife and I started doing it, I don't know, 2-3 months ago or whatever. And like it works on your phone, and you go out in the wilds, and like this rando Pokemon will show up, and you catch them, and and you can stop. The more you walk, the more points you get, and like the more places you go, you spin they have like a disc at like all churches have them, and then you get gifts and more balls to catch more Pokemon and whatever, and you can trade them with friends, and you send gifts to friends and whatever. And so like that's how we've been keeping. We touch we play with our own kids, and then we play with their cousins, and then a couple kids from our youth group and whatever. And it's just kind of fun and silly and whatever.
Yeah.
But like, it's kind of fun and addicting, and so I've started playing it without them. And there I am down there working, like 2 days away from my own house, catching Pokemon in El Paso, Texas.
I mean, that seems like a real manly thing to.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. But then I get to they've given it up. This game's been around for like, I don't know, 10 years now.
Yeah, I did it a while back for
Yeah.
a while. Yeah,
Yeah.
for the same reason.
Oh, it's kind of fun, but then like now you're just the 40-year-old guy doing it.
Yeah.
That's
And
creepy.
And it's kind of
At the adult bookstore or
by the adult
movie
bookstore, by the adult movie drive-in or whatever.
That's funky. All right, you're listening to Live from the Path. Here's what we got going on the show tonight. We do have some news that we're going to catch up on. A couple interesting picks in the news. There was somebody turned to meet to follow Jesus from their Muslim family, and they sprayed acid on him.
Who keeps acid around?
I don't know. I'd have to go source some. Like, I'd have to be under the expectation it was going to happen. Also, there's kind of a cool. They found like a really old Hebrew tablet known as the Curse Tablet.
Yeah.
But it's really awesome because it mentions the personal name of Yahweh, and it dates back much farther than there's a modern I don't want to call it all like liberal theology, but like modern thought has believed that, say, the Old Testament wasn't written when it purports to have been written. That like almost all of it would have been written and collected in later on, kind of the time of Daniel, as an example. Or maybe even in the 500 to 800 time frame. So like around the time of exile, basically once they start to go into exile, they're like, crap, we better write some stuff down. And like that doesn't marry up with a lot of how Scripture is presenting itself, but there was not a lot of scriptural evidence, things outside of the Bible or the stuff outside of the Bible that would otherwise validate an older
Archaeological
timeline.
type.
Yep.
Yeah.
And this actually is a pretty big find because it allows it that the Jewish people were writing down the personal name of Yahweh on something that was dated much earlier than when the purported kind of newer timeline of the Old Testament might represent.
So do they run into problems because like sometimes the same folks will date things by either carbon dating or potassium dating or something, right?
Yeah.
And they'll say, well, the Earth is actually 50 billion years old, and we go, no, that can't be true. But then we'll say, but the way that you've dated this tablet, we will accept.
The most, especially like young Earth creationists, would niche that.
I don't
out.
know what's a young Earth creationist.
As someone who believes that like the Earth is like if you the most literal reading of Genesis would give you say that humans probably have been around pre 6,000 BC or a little bit later, and that the Earth was formed at that same time, and so the Earth is no more than roughly 8,000 years old. So. And so versus old Earth creationists who say like God definitely created, there wasn't anything like evolution or whatever, but like He created at a point in time of which then the Earth was created mature, and so you didn't have to wait a million years for oil to show up in the ground. The Lord created the Earth, of which all the process as were aged when they were done.
I think I'm one of those people.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly not beyond. I mean, why would you think God couldn't do that?
Yeah.
Like if
I mean, it's not like He puts an Earth together and goes, oh shucks, I didn't plan on this.
Right.
Like He knew the sediment and the whatevers, and He knew all that was going to happen. He's like, I'm just going to put it in there as if it's ready to go.
yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, but a young Earth creationist certainly would say that like it was such a kind of a cataclysmic event that the carbon dating can't be trusted, right? Like whatever the situation was when it occurred.
Oh, okay. Which I suppose it could be reasonable as well.
Yeah, I mean it's the same explanation that essentially to say it was created mature, and that's one of the things that gets dicey about the creation work is that like I mean again, not only was nobody there, and there's no particular evidence that validates like any particular perspective on it outside of the narrative that the Bible is giving you, assuming that's the narrative but the Bible's actually trying to explain, but like. In addition, because you're saying there's a first cause, there's a God stepping in and doing something that is outside of the natural laws of which the earth is otherwise bound, then like none of the ways in which you measure the natural laws would be effective.
Well, right, and none of the natural laws existed before He stepped in, right? Because there wouldn't have been any natural laws. The natural laws are whatever He said they were.
Right. Now, if you're an atheist, you'll go like, boy, you can put anything in that bucket. Like anything that can't be explained, you'll be like, well, I mean, God did it. Which, I mean, I've seen Christians do, and you're like, no, he probably didn't do that. And so, like, it's a weird place because it can be totally true, but like, there's all kinds of weird stuff people could put underneath it that wouldn't be right. They could abuse that thought as well, or be lazy with it. So, anyway, actually, let's read this one first. So, biblical researchers say they have decoded an ancient Hebrew inscription known as a curse tablet that predates by centuries any known Hebrew inscription from ancient Israel. The inscription was found on Mount Ebal, the mountain of the curse mentioned in Deuteronomy 27 and Joshua 8.
Hold on, I'll look it up while you're doing it.
Cursed. This is what it reads: Cursed, 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 cursed by the God of Yahweh. You will die cursed. Cursed you will surely die. Cursed by Yahweh. Cursed, cursed, cursed.
Wow.
Read the earliest proto-alphabetic Hebrew text recovered on a small folded lead tablet. The Associates for Biblical Research announced at a press conference at the Lanier Theological Library in Houston, Texas, on Thursday. I believe the amulet dates to the late Bronze II age or as early as 1400 BC. He added this is earlier than many skeptics believe the Bible existed, making this the earliest appearance of the word Yahweh in Israel, and it was found at a covenant site. The implications are enormous and will reverberate for many years to come. This is a big deal. The amulet, known as the Defixio or Curse Tablet, came to light in December 2019 when Stripling, also the director of the Archaeological Studies Institute at the Bible Seminary, went with his team to wet sift the discarded material from excavations conducted in 1982 to 1989 in West Bank. The amulet and its inscriptions do not predate the Bible, Stripling said. We believe it coincides with the biblical events. We talk about verisimilitude, a consistency between what we read in the text and what we find in the material culture. If the text were true, this is what you would anticipate finding, and indeed, it is what we found.
Wait, so if I understood that right, these guys sifted through stuff that like they did construction or something? It wasn't like other archaeologists.
No, yeah, there were archaeologists. So the excavations were conducted by the late Haifa University archaeology professor Adam Zertal, who discovered the altar of Joshua on Mount Ebal near the city of Nablus in the West Bank. And he was doing archaeological work between 1982 and 1989 in the West Bank, and then had
discarded
stuff. And these guys went back sifting through
He's
it.
feeling silly right now.
Yeah.
Well, he's dead.
We missed a big one. Well, I mean,
Yeah, you threw out the curse tablet. Oh. I wonder, it took them how many years? 3 years to decipher it? Like, they're almost all one word in there like 9 times.
Yeah, they right. I mean, I suppose once you unlock the pattern, you're like, cursed.
Yeah.
Yahweh.
Bummer.
Haifa University professor Gershon Galil told the Times of Israel, this is a text you find only every 1,000 years. Some have raised concerns about the claims, with one unnamed academic telling the Times of Israel the fact that they are publishing it on the news before being published scientifically is a bit off.
Okay.
Let's see here. According to the Bible, Mount Ebal was the mountain from which the curses were called out for those who broke God's law when the children of Israel made a covenant with God before entering the land of Israel. Deuteronomy 11:29 reads, when the Lord your God has brought you into the land you are entering to possess, you are to proclaim on Mount Gerizim the blessings, and on Mount Ebal the curses. So this was I believe this is the setup where you there's a picture in but was it Joshua where there was a group of people on Gerizim and then a group of people on Ebal, and then they would talk back to each other.
Yeah,
is that right, Dan?
Yeah, kind of chant back and forth.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, this Deuteronomy 27 kind of. It's where everybody responds. Like they call out a curse, and then everybody goes, yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Hold on, I got it in the message though. That's probably not legit. Hold on, I didn't mean that. Curse, but basically, Deuteronomy 27 says, look, when you cross over the Jordan, you're going to build this on Mount Ebal and cover it in plaster, and then curses from Mount Ebal. Then Moses says, keep silence, and hear, O Israel, this day you have become the people of the Lord your God. You shall therefore obey the voice of the Lord your God, keeping his commandments and his statutes, which I command you today. And then he starts yelling curses. Cursed be the man who makes a carved or cast metal image, an abomination to the Lord, a thing made by the hands of a craftsman, and sets it up in secret. And all the people shall answer and say, Amen.
Yeah.
And then he goes on to curse a bunch, and everyone's like, yeah, agree.
And that's what the tablet was and where it was found. Where
Except
someone wrote the curses down.
What was the exact curse from the tablet?
It didn't say for what. It just said curse.
It's just a small piece
Curse,
of
yeah.
it. Yeah.
Cursed by Yahweh God. Curse.
Yeah, Moses was talking too fast, and he only got the curse.
Yeah.
That's super
It
interesting.
makes you wonder, who was holding that thing at some point, who had that? That's just kind of
all kinds of people,
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's crazy for it to survive the previous excavation.
Yeah. Well, wasn't it only like a couple inches or something, or it was a pretty small.
Yeah, it wasn't much. It was
a couple centimeters maybe. Was
and
that it?
I didn't quite get a good when they said a folded tablet, they didn't have a good picture of it in this particular article. So
Yeah.
anyway,
I remember reading that too and thinking, what? Wait, what?
What do you mean folded?
Wow.
Anyway, it's a real I remember I read an article on this earlier in the week, and it said it kind of made the same claims, like this is a landmark discovery. I'm like, I'm not quite sure I understand why, but now I get it. It's validating. It puts the language back a farther.
Yeah.
And so then starts to frame in at least probably a more consistent understanding with when the scriptures were written, or that they were writing things down and the name Yahweh was referenced there. Mm-hmm. And so it does mean a lot for how you interpret some of the dating of the Old Testament, especially in light of modern scholarship, modern scholarship tends to want to push everything out. It wants to push the stuff later that happened in the Old Testament, and then it wants to push a lot of the New Testament stuff to happening later as well, because some of that just gives you room to say, well, then maybe it was jacked with, as an example. And so I don't know if it's a win for the conservative dating folk in the Old Testament.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And so anyway, that was a cool one. There was a. Let's go to that. So radical Muslims in eastern Uganda sprayed acid on their family members during an argument over their conversion from Islam to Christianity and were told, you deserve death. The family survived but remained in the hospital after being treated for burns. The reason I read these stories is because I do feel like we just need reminded of that sometimes. That like some of the things that the prayers that are going on in Scripture and some of the burdens that the church is carrying as a whole, like because we're not seeing a lot of these things, it just feels so distant. But like there's some family somewhere, someone who met Jesus and like knew this could happen.
Right.
Like they knew this would be the case, and yet not only did they still turn to follow Jesus, but they still told their family. Mm-hmm. And like there's always in the back of my mind that like I am scared to death that I'm a coward, and because of where I live, it's just not been revealed. That something like that would be enough. It's like, well, you like this is certain. Hey, man, if you go in here, they could throw acid on you, and you go, I'm going to go in anyway.
I think that's where maybe sometimes we do really weird things in America because we're trying to be courageous and we don't have a need to be.
Yes.
So we're like, well, yeah, but I wore that T-shirt that said, yeah, turn or burn. Well, you just became a jerk,
Yeah, right.
Or I said something really rude. I stood on the street corner with a sign and called people names. And it's like, well, yeah.
Yeah, it's trying to force it out in places because we're so comfortable and we want to identify with the risk.
Yeah.
We end up doing stuff like that.
So I was thinking about this earlier this week. I don't know. I was reading some kind of scandal article or some kind, and it was about Chris Pratt, who goes to a fairly big church, and he got railed on the internet because his church preaches, they're homophobic and whatever, and so like a gal had got on there and say it's time to put an end to this dangerous practice. It leads to alienation and suicides, and you need to be done with this, And like for a hot second, I stood back and I was just thinking about it, and I'm like, I do this. I do tell people this, right? And like, there's a possibility that within their mindset of how they're taking in information, that they are so broken because you said the thing that they're doing is not the thing to do, that they make some very, very poor decisions. And so like, where I don't think we're running into the risk in America of like people spraying you with acid, like it does. I did step back for a little bit and go, the person that's saying, look, this leads to this and this and this and this, I know that's not true, right? The things that they're saying, like you're bringing people into what God has designed for them, does not actually lead to that. It's a broken world and a mistrust of the God that created them, and a culture that has bred into them certain things that just aren't flat out true, But could you be the tail end catalyst, that said a thing, a true thing, and they took that as, well, I guess that's it. I can't live in this life anymore, And like, you are wielding, that type of information, and like, I guess I just thought of it like, as in, I'm not really worried about getting sprayed with acid to my own detriment,
yeah,
right? But I was really concerned for the day that's like, I better believe this. I better believe that God is true and holy and right and good, and that He is in the middle of all the things that I'm saying. Because on my own, I don't want this kind of power. I don't want that kind of influence over people, and I don't want the ability for someone to think something so poorly. You know what I'm saying? And so, like, yeah. it's a different problem, And maybe I pine for the straight up physical and emotional meeting of a truth that the Muslims are willing to embrace, right? And so they're like, we'll just spray you with acid. That seems like the rightful outcome for a decision that you made. I'm like, at least it's out on the table and not some kind of mystical, feeling-based, I in fact, even when I was out of town working, and I spent most of the time listening to like 90s rock with a guy I was working with, and like I grew up on this stuff. And the more I listened to it this week, the more I thought, what a bunch of whiners. I mean, honestly, like they're all like their songs are always named something super heavy or super something that you can't put your finger on because it's mystical and hard to understand and enveloped in feelings. And I'm like, you guys need a regular job swinging a wrench or something. Maybe you wouldn't feel this way if you couldn't be consumed by your feelings all day. Yeah. And that's how you made money. Your whole entire professional career was based on like this pining or weird depression and all bold into one, and then all you did was whine about it your whole life. Well, no wonder you're bummed out.
Yeah.
Right? How's that working out for you? You hate it. You're just not willing to admit it. So anyway, it's just in comparison to like, I'm not worried about people like physically attacking us or like, people putting us to our death. I am concerned that like in our current state of culture with feelings taking priority over everything, the power of your words are, I don't know, they're big.
Yeah, no doubt. So, like the story's kind of interesting because the question is, how do they come to meet Jesus? It says reports surfaced. One of the victims, Waiswa, said they converted to Christianity when a pastor visited their home and shared the gospel on February 17th. Now, that's another dangerous thing to do. Not only going to tell your family, but like you're the guy knocking on doors, going, "Hey, I think I was." See if you guys want to hear about Jesus. I don't know whether this acid thing extends to that guy, but I can't imagine it wouldn't.
Yeah,
Right.
you could have gotten the acid straight away.
Yeah. That guy, that pastor's something else. Anyway, it says when the pastor visited their home and shared the gospel. When the relatives came to know about their conversion, they called them for a meeting with other clan members on March 8th. During the meeting, we were asked about our salvation, and we affirmed to them that we had believed in Jesus and converted to Christianity. They told us to renounce Jesus, but we stood by the newly founded faith in Jesus. When we refused to recant our faith in Jesus, my father, Arajabu, recited some Quranic verses, and after they forcefully started beating us with sticks as prescribed in the Quran, claiming that we were apostates. As this was not enough, my father went inside the room and picked up a bottle of acid and began spraying it on us while the group started shouting, Allah Akbar, you deserve death, and then disowned us. The 3 victims didn't realize initially that they had been sprayed with acid, but as we were fleeing for our lives, we started feeling some serious itching that continued until the pain intensified. A nearby Christian neighbor called the pastor, who arrived immediately and took us to the hospital in Bali, but our daughter was seriously affected and was referred to a hospital in Jinja. On March 9th, their home was burned to the ground. 4 days later, in a separate incident, radical Muslim villagers attacked a former mosque leader identified as Swala Mulongo of Bugobi for putting his faith in Christ after being evangelized by a pastor in January. It was around 8 a.m. when 4 Muslims stopped me and began asking me so many questions regarding Christianity, but I did not respond. Then the men started beating me up with blows and sticks, but thank God when they saw some people approaching, they fled away. Mulongo suffered deep head wounds and his wrist was broken. The radical Muslims then killed goats and chickens that were owned by the pastor who had led Mulongo to Christ. Let's see here. Looks like this is kind of common. Of the over 200 acid attack survivors with whom I've worked with in Uganda, only 20% of the perpetrators were charged or had any legal consequences.
Is acid that common? Do people just have it?
I suppose when it's part of your faith expression.
Yeah, I mean, is it? Is
They
that like a
market it.
common Muslim faith expression to have acid around in case an apostate come by?
I don't know. Boy, I mean, bless them fellas out there.
Yeah.
Again, and remember, like, there's that Christian pastor lived down the street, down the way.
That is kind of, that was the part that kind of stuck out, like our Christian neighbor, and they're not after him. So is it?
Well, he's apostate already.
And we don't do that. Like if people leave the Christian faith, like we don't beat them or like call them names or
we
something.
talk about them behind their back.
Right,
maybe.
we just gossip about them.
We just say, man, that was a bad choice.
Local breakfast. Weird. Yeah. So is our reaction? Do we not hold it? Do we not find it to do any good? I guess is that the outcome? Like it's just like with the Jehovah's Witness. We're like, well, at least they're getting out there doing stuff. I mean, you can at least appreciate that they're doing some work. And so, like, do we take people leaving the faith or no longer, prescribing Christianity, and we go, well, I mean, it's their choice. They have to deal with
based
God
on
on this
faith,
thing.
though. I mean, Christianity is based on faith, and
Yeah.
intimidation does not create faith.
Right,
It just
not coercion.
creates fear.
That's right.
That's
so it's a whole different base that we're coming from.
Yeah, it'd be like Jesus looking out at someone going and saying, Ted, do you love me? He says, no, but I'm scared to death of my neighbor.
Right.
So I'm here. Can I live with you?
Yeah.
Right. That is
Like when the guy says, I would love to follow you, but I would like to go bury my father first. And Jesus beats him with a stick and says, wrong answer.
you fickle dolt. Yeah. Boy. Anyway, I'd like again folks to be praying for. There's people who it is no the consequences of me going, yes, I love Jesus are very minimal here.
I remember reading a friend's post in a group once about I think it's in India where they're training all these preachers and they know they're only going to last so long because they're going to die.
Yeah.
It's not like they're going to get discouraged and become a baker. They're going to die, and I just like, wow. I mean, there's so many things to think through on that. Like if you're the one teaching the guy who's going to go out and die, it's like, well, I mean, it's just, you just do what you do. You just do it. It's just you're just making disciples. We're doing it. But you think, man, I'm sending you to your death.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a heaviness on the teacher as well, I would think.
I think that, like the same thing we were just talking about, right?
Yeah,
like it just, you do wield an amazing responsibility. And like, I think it's probably just good to be humbled about it every once in a while and realize the things that you're saying, especially in that culture, right? Like that guy's out doing God's work, knowing full well that like he might not even putting himself in danger, but he's putting the people that he's telling all this information to. Yeah. And like for that not to bother you more, most people are like, you know what? Beat me, hit me, hurt me. I'm in this thing,
happens, yeah.
right? But like you get away scot-free after you told the guy the gospel and he accepted it and he dies
and his family and his children and his goats,
right? And you get to and you live on to keep preaching the gospel and you're like, God has to be in this because otherwise I can't take this,
Yeah, it's interesting. Like we just talking before the show started. So like as new couples, show up to your church. Like, can you look them in the eye and go, "Boy, I want to introduce them to Jesus," and then now think of by them agreeing to it or believing you, they are put at risk. Their life is in danger.
Yeah, right.
What a deal!
I a few weeks ago, just randomly, I was thinking about this house church I visited in China in 1994.
Yeah.
And maybe I talked about this. I can't remember because it was fresh on my mind. But I thought, I could remember the guy. I could hear his voice and everything. And then I thought, I'm just going to Google his name and look on the YouTube. And there was a video of him like within 2 years of when I was there talking. And he's in his house church. And you can see, I thought, man, I was in that room. I know exactly where he's at.
Yeah.
And it was just so cool. And same thing, like he had spent over 20 years in hard labor. He knew his people were being persecuted. Some would end up in jail. You just never know. But they just keep doing it. It's like, I'm not going to stop. He was like all excited. The Chinese government did not intimidate him in the least.
Right.
But God was like, he was very impressed with God. And I think, okay, I got none of that. I mean,
right.
I mean, I got it, my faith, but it's like I've never had to test that.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Right. Well, and I mean, maybe it's just in a comparison to our American culture, but like sometimes we get up in arms over a small squabble within the congregation. Like some guys like, I don't agree with the blah blah blah.
You got the wrong toilet paper.
Yeah, right. Something stupid, or like I don't like this teaching series that you're doing, and you're like, oh, maybe he's right. Then your stomach hurts a little, and you're like, I don't know, maybe he is right. I don't know. And like this guy's out there just, dealing in life and death situations, but also watching the power of gospel transition, right? Like the people don't decide just to put themselves in ultimate risk merely because of your suave words, right? The gospel's never done that. Like it is always the presence of the Holy Spirit and the words of someone who follows Jesus already that puts those two together. And so know that like maybe that's the only comforting part here is to know that like the Holy Spirit does the moving. Your job is to do what God has asked you to do when He's asked you to do it. Mm-hmm. And the Holy Spirit is the one moving and shaking, and they're getting all of their rewards. This world's the stuff we have to offer is paltry and not impressive.
Next story, Reverend Cedric Alexander, a retired pastor with the African Methodist Episcopal Church Incorporated, has filed a proposed class action lawsuit alleging that the denomination lost some 70% or nearly $100 million from its retirement plan through foolish and risky investments, which have hurt about 5,000 participants financially. The document alleges that Jerome Harris, the former executive director of the denomination's Department of Retirement Services, there's one guy who works in this Department of Retirement Services, was given sole authority to invest tens of millions of AMEC clergy's and other church servants' retirement savings in a questionable and potentially unlawful purchase of undeveloped land in Florida, a promissory note to an Illinois installer of solar panels, and an even more foolish investment in a now non-existent capital venture outfit.
Yikes.
Was it like investing in all kinds of woke stuff or something like?
No, I think they're
just
stupid.
Yeah,
they're just bad investments.
Yeah, like he bought development land in Florida that no one else had purchased and built on, assuming that it was going to,
The
appreciate.
next Disney.
Yeah, a promissory note to like a loan to an Illinois installer of solar panels, and investment in a non-existent capital venture outfit.
It doesn't even sound like fraud. It just sounds like idiocy.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. Yeah. I don't think the guy, like, it'd be different. I first thought this guy's stolen $100 million, and he bought an RV with it or whatever you do.
Yeah.
But no, he's just so stupidly invested this money that it has cost. He lost $100 million in retirement plan. And while all this was happening, church officials kept reporting to the plan's beneficiaries that the retirement funds were safely flourishing as investments in annuities from Symetra Financial.
Now, how is that possible?
I don't know. So
they'd have to be making up the numbers.
Like, I mean, are they? Now, here's the thing: do you put one guy in to count the money, and then you ask the same guy how it's doing? Because maybe that's what they did. They just said, "Hey, Jerome, how are things going?" He's like, "We're flourishing in the annuities at Symetra Financial."
Yeah, as long as I don't send him out a whole dollar amount and I put some cents back there, this looks legit.
It says the suit is about a complete and total abrogation of these fiduciary responsibilities by the defendants, resulting in numerous breaches of duty and resulting in a single unmonitored individual, defended Harris. Now, so I guess here's the question. So the church decides we're going to do something or other. And church communities are limited by whoever happens to be around, right? And so sometimes the guy who runs the finance ministry, like, I mean, you try to get a reasonable dude, but it's got to be some, it could be the guy who said, well, I took an accounting class when I was in high school or whatever. And he's the closest thing you got. Or the guy who runs who's the janitor, or the guy who's working on building maintenance. Like, there's no guarantee that he's qualified. He's who's around, who's the closest thing you have. And so, like, is the church doing itself a disservice by, I don't know, farming out certain things within your church organization when you just don't have the right guy? It's all right to go, you know what, we're going to pay the secular world. The muggles are going to do it.
Yeah. Some churches should consider doing that with their sound ministry.
Yeah, right.
Right? Like,
right.
Like you go to churches and they're like, the band is rocking and you would never know it because the sound is so horrible. And they're like, because Phil is the only guy that ever agreed to do it. And now he's got the board all taped off like a madman. And they're like, Phil stinks at this.
Yeah.
Right?
He's
So
not
it's
any
okay
good.
to go, maybe we should just pay somebody like $50 or something. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, maybe that wasn't the case, but like, how do you end up with one dude? How do you end up with one guy? That's it.
Yeah.
Who's responsible for all this stuff? And then no one goes, hey, maybe we better check on Jerome. I'm not sure he's skilled in this area.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, it doesn't sound like he's purposely fraudulating. He's probably in way over his head and be like, hey, I don't know, I was reading a blog and it said you should buy undeveloped land.
This is great.
Yeah. This will be the best investment ever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That'd be me. I mean, I'd be like the worst guy to manage something like that, and I'd be like making everybody go into poverty. And I was like, I'm sorry, it sounded so good.
Yeah.
it looked so shiny.
And
Yeah.
who do you blame? You blame them both. The guy that asked him and the guy that didn't say no.
Yeah.
Like, no, I'm not qualified for this.
There's like a lot of people who weren't like maybe reading reports. Don't they like give reports on this stuff?
Yeah, unless he was straight up like phoning them in. Like, how could no one notice? Like if they're kicking out financial statements, like either he's making them at home in a
Falsifying
PDF
them,
editor, or I don't know.
I mean, like I get all these little reports all the time, and like half the time I don't know, I don't have clueless. But once in a while, I actually look at it, and go, oh look,
Yeah, good.
yeah, but
This is happening.
yeah,
This is up.
Boy, this is well. Okay, we're not going to go into any additional detail. This, the more you get into this, though, it's just straight up incompetence. It's not. Although it did say, it was claimed that at the January 31st meeting, the office of the executive director of the AME's Department of Retirement Services had been emptied, with nothing in the office cabinets but empty files and paper clips.
Oh, so he took a run for it.
Yeah, it does sound like it. Okay. Finally, let's do one more thing, and then we'll do some advice. So just oh wait, where'd it go? There we go.
Yeah.
So you figure this was coming. If Christians want to know what's going to happen in the future, they only need look to the book. They only need to look to the Bible. God is impeccably perfect in his prophetic announcements, said Pastor Tony Evans of Oak Cliff Bible Fellowship. The Bible is full of prophecy. The Bible is God's prophetic syllabus, giving us an outline of things to come, he added, and before walking the congregation through the Bible's prophetic calendar. In Matthew 24:3, Jesus' disciples asked him to reveal the signs of his second coming, and he replied, you will hear of wars and rumors of wars, But see to it that you are not alarmed. Such things must happen, but the end is still to come. Nation will rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom. There will be famines and earthquakes in various places. All these are the beginning of birth pains. Evans cautioned, however, that God has not given anyone the knowledge of when Jesus will return. I'm not saying that what we are seeing today is proof positive that Jesus is coming tomorrow. He added, what I'm saying is, it could be. Now, that's not relevant to anything happening. Delving into the Bible to discuss the signs to be on the lookout for over the next 7 years, Evans said to watch Russia, countries in the Middle East, and the rising conflict over oil. I mean, you could have done that with the blindfold and the TV off.
They were telling me that in the 80s.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm.
Like Reagan could have made the same prediction.
Yeah.
Oil, he stressed, will be a dominant issue in the coming years, which will bring Russia and the Middle East into conflict before Jesus' return. The 72-year-old pastor said he predicts that a conflict over oil between Russia and Middle Eastern nations will reach its fullest expression during a series of 7 years. In the final days, he said, a war will break out against Israel. You think you got high gas prices now? You ain't seen nothing yet, Evans declared. Oil will become the dominant issue. And with oil being the issue and the Middle East being in conflict with the oil-bearing nations and Russia coming down from the north, there will be a coming together of the Middle East, of Europe, of Russia. The Bible says God is going to arrange for them to collect themselves against Israel.
Why would all of them have a problem with Israel though? Like based on the thing that he set up, all the oil nations, instead of fighting amongst each other, they band together and attack the democratic state of Israel for unknown reasons. Okay, I'm digging it so far.
He says Israel was chosen by God to bring the living word and the written word, Evans emphasized, declaring that God knew before time that Israel would be the nation that would give birth to the Messiah. I mean, yes and no. It's not the nation state of Israel. 1948 Israel's state was not, that's not the lineage of the Messiah. The lineage of the Messiah was the people.
Right.
Goodness me. The Ten Commandments would also come out of the land, and the scriptures would be birthed through the Jews. Everything revolves around the place of Israel. When Jesus Christ comes back, he is coming back to Jerusalem, and he's coming back with us. Jesus Christ is coming back at the end of the tribulation with the saints who have already been raptured. Every eye will see him. None of this will happen without God's orchestration. They may not know it now. They may not believe it now. They may not acknowledge it now. But on that day, there will be no question that that's the day of the Lord, he said. The church clock began. God has established his church. Jesus has established his church. People are being made one to Christ. And those who accept Christ become part of his church age. The church age comes to a conclusion at the rapture. The reason why it is not the end yet is there is an event that will take place before the end time clock gets punched. And that event is called the rapture. Okay.
So, I mean, if you had to say where this has missed the target the most, what would you say? Here's the thing, because people still get caught up in this. People still get led astray here. So like we're laughing kind of over some of the ties and the ridiculous things, but like there's legit dudes who love Jesus that read Revelation and hear the same thing he hears.
I think they miss kingdom. They misunderstand who the kingdom is. Is it Israel or is it the people of God in the church? That changes everything.
Right, and maybe also the definition of Israel as the Bible purports it.
Yeah.
And
right. Paul speaks of Israel as not just the physical lineage descendants from Israel the man and the progeny thereforth. It's basically all who follow Jesus are Israel. That's Paul's
grafted
redefinition.
branch. Yeah,
That's right.
Yeah, and also like let's say that you even want to live in a reality that says it's the boundaried, state of Israel. It was different when the book of Revelation was written. The boundaried state of Israel is not the exact same boundaries that were today, and they went through 100 iterations between now and then. And so to say that because I'm reading it, then this is now the boundary state of Israel of which the Bible intended. You have to realize that you're basically reading your reality into a very old text.
Yeah.
Right. And so it's just interesting. I think almost everything he said, there's solid biblical arguments against some of the things that he's pumping out. But the reason to bring it up now is because it's topical and it gets people fired up, and almost the coercion part that says, hey, look what's going on with Russia and Ukraine. This could be the end of the rapture and blah, 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 blah. And and notice his point is it really isn't the end times until we're involved. Until we get in, until we get in the middle of this thing.
Until we're taken out.
Right.
Which also is not the trajectory of Scripture. When there's trouble, God's people are generally supposed to be running in. The rapture has us going out. And like, I mean, if you, like, no joke, if this is something where what he's saying makes sense to you, like Matthew 24, I think the part he's talking about is not talking about Jesus' return. That's continuing to talk about the destruction of the temple in context. And so, like, there's a split in Matthew 24, 25. Part he's talking about the destruction of the temple. Part he's talking about his second coming. The Revelation it's not reading it correctly to. And this goes back to the understanding of kingdom. If you think of kingdom as something that has to happen way in the future, then you read Revelation that way. If you trust that when Jesus says the kingdom has arrived, because he does, and John precedes that and says the kingdom is near, talking about Jesus, then what they're talking about in Revelation has a current relevancy to them. And so it is a broad picture that describes kind of a reality over time, not necessarily in the future alone. It's something that has been true for that expresses itself in different ways amongst time, but otherwise is a reality that has been true of all for the most part of all time. And so, and
I suppose in that same vein, like the Book of Revelation has to mean something to the people that it was written to.
Yeah. It's not like John is writing this letter, bothering to do it. From this island, from Patmos, to these churches in Asia Minor, because they want to give a heads up on Russian need for oil and the skirmish in Ukraine.
Right.
Like they don't. Okay, thanks. And these are people who are being like they're seeing persecution at this time, and John is encouraging them by going, "Yeah, but there'll be a war over oil."
Yeah.
Not really. It's not as a pastor you wouldn't do that. It wouldn't make any sense to, and it doesn't benefit them. And frankly, I'm not sure it benefits us. How many people have read that and said, "Hey, I think it's over this," and it wasn't.
Right. Okay. Every war that comes up, people go, "Just the birth pains."
Every tornado,
birth pains,
earthquake,
And here's the thing: is like you can cover a lot of ground with rumors of wars. Right? There's wars and rumors of wars. Well, that's all the time. Pretty much every minute of every day in entire history, there's either been a war or a rumor that one might be going on somewhere in the world. You know?
Yeah, exactly right. Okay, you're listening to Live from the Path. Thanks for hanging out with us so far tonight. If you got any feedback for us, you can call the Bob Eisenhower Live from the Path complaint line, 515-517-0085. That's call or text 515-517-0085. I ran into Bob Eisenhower last week. I happened to be working at a coffee shop, and he was sitting over next to me and recognized my voice and came over and we talked. And I had casually mentioned we were just talking about going to that coffee shop or whatever, and we were talking about the banana bar at this coffee shop because this really is fantastic. And
banana bar?
Yeah, like a pumpkin bar type of thing, but instead it's like a
I
banana
was thinking
bread.
like a potato bar.
Yeah.
Like, what
what
toppings
kind
do you
of
put on
fixings
bananas?
do you put on a banana?
Okay.
like a dessert.
I just put an apricot on there. I don't know.
Great. With some butterscotch.
Anyway, I went back to work, and not 10 minutes later, the waitress shows up with the banana bar, and Eisenhower has disappeared and had one sent over like a real suave. Doggone that guy.
Oh, he's great.
He's so awesome.
That's why he's the sponsor.
He is. That's right. He gets the complaint line for that beauty right there. Okay, Mike, let's hand out some advice.
Dear Live from the Path, my husband and I have 2 elementary-aged children. My mother occasionally babysits for us and freely volunteers to do so. If we sometimes hire sitters, she seems offended. However, she insists she must watch the children in our home, never hers. While we appreciate her time, it would be lovely to drop the children off at her home occasionally rather than have to leave our house if we want a date night. I have made gentle suggestions, which she invariably declines. I should mention the condition of her home is borderline hoarder status. We have offered to sort things with her and even hire a company to help her move anything she could part with. Her house is starting to smell funny, and it's definitely not very clean. I'm at a loss about why she won't address this. It's not a time issue. She's retired. I suspect she's deliberately making the house unwelcoming to avoid having anyone over, including her grandchildren. Wow. Think about yourself much? When she babysits at our house, she sets a very early end time, 9 p.m., and then complains about how tired she is and gets a bit martyrish, although she has told me on many other occasions that she enjoys our kids and that they are, quotes, easy to watch. I can't help but feel this issue might be resolved at her house. Am I unreasonable, or do you have other suggestions?
What?
He basically boarded a plane, and then midair he jumped to a different plane, and then headed off to a different direction. Yeah. So if I could suss it out a little bit, let's see if we get the gist of it. Is the grandma offers to watch the kids sometimes, but she insists it's over at their house.
Yeah.
And the guy doesn't like it. He goes, it sure would be nice if we could drive the kids out to grandma's house and leave them there, which I don't quite understand.
Except it's unsanitary, and I don't want my children there.
And then, then he goes to explain that she's basically a hoarder with a dirty home, which pretty much excuses why grandma wouldn't want him over there in the first place. But then he continues to rail on about how she sets an early bedtime, like they have to be home from date night by 9 p.m., and that she really enjoys watching the kids. It's not really that big of a deal, but she's just not interested in having the kids over at her place.
Yeah, so hire a different babysitter on the nights you want to stay out longer. And you can mix it around, mix it up.
Yeah, he's basically asking whether he's unreasonable. Am I unreasonable, or do you have other suggestions?
Yeah, hire other babysitters once in a while. Let grandma have some grandma time. That's cool. Plan that on not long date nights. And once in a while, you got to have your long date night that goes late into the night or whatever you're doing. Bring in someone else.
Yeah, what sounds weird to me is, hey, I appreciate that you watch my kids for free and that you like doing it, but I also want to I want to drop them at your house, and this is going to be a deal. It's going to be a line in the sand for me that I get to leave my own house to drop the kids off at yours and then pick them up on the way home. I don't know anybody that would want to do that. I would rather have people at my house so that by the time I get home, the kids are already in bed, like when they were supposed to be.
Yeah.
And I don't have to drag them in the car and wake them back up again and make it a deal. And they're already in bed, which means that my wife and I can just go to bed too. Like we don't have to go roast the kids up and re-wake them up and make sure they pee and all that jazz, right? All the hard stuff's done. So I don't understand, like, I'm tired of having you babysit these kids at my home. It's weird.
Huh. Yeah, I don't. Yeah, I think he's being unreasonable. Like, it's unclear why he's motivated to want to take the kids over to her house. Like, he's being put out to house his own children.
Yeah. And I think Dan's right. Like, if grandma don't like staying up super late, then on the nights that you're like, look, we're gonna hit the town, then hire somebody else. And if grandma goes, oh, I really wish it was me, it's like, Ma, I know you go to bed early, and we had to stay out late tonight, so no big deal. Everyone seems mystified by this problem.
Doesn't seem this difficult.
I don't understand why we're having such a hard time here.
This is a real weird operation going on here.
All right, Secular says, you aren't being unreasonable. Oh, for heaven's sakes. I would describe your attitude as entitled. Your mother is also entitled. She's entitled to set the time and place in which she will be performing this free service for you. If your date will extend beyond the time your mom is, quotes, available, you will have to hire someone else, and she will have to accept it. P.S. Continue to press your mom about the issue of her hoarding, because it may be a symptom of a larger problem. Okay, no one invited you into that realm, Secular. You stay where you're put.
Stay in your lane.
Okay. Secondly, dear Life from the Path, my partner, quotes Josh, is a musician who insists on still practicing with the band even though he doesn't have any gigs. We have 2 fragile family members who would die if they got COVID-19, so we have tried to avoid any risks. Yet he still does band practice with people outside our household. The bandmates are not careful like we are, and one even has weekly gigs with another band! Exclamation point. I want to ask Josh to stop band practice altogether, but I'm afraid he will resent me, fly off the handle, and ultimately end our relationship. I wish I didn't have to worry and ask this stuff, but he keeps putting himself in situations that violate everything we have worked so hard to accomplish. Why is it so hard for him to give up in-person practice? Why can't he put everybody's safety first? I'm so conflicted. What do I do? Girlfriend, incidentally.
Yeah, I guess I don't. Didn't she say we have family members?
Yes.
But they're not married.
Right. So it sounds like they live in this, it's boyfriend, girlfriend, live in the same home. Most likely they have older folks that are in their extended families.
Do they live in the house?
No.
Oh.
No.
Well, then...
No.
Yeah, I mean, you might be overreacting on this thing.
Yeah.
I mean, are they? I mean, here's there's 2 questions. One is actually more relevant than the other, but we tend to care about the second one. We tend to care about number 2, which is are they being hypocritical? Are you a hypocrite? Like, are you upset that he's going? Like, have you locked down? Are you being consistent? Have you locked down everything else, and it's only the practice that you're worried about?
Right.
But to be honest, like, even if you were or were not a hypocrite, it doesn't solve the question. The core question is that, like, is this a reasonable ask? to do this? Is it necessary to lock down in the way that you are? Is this guy being stubborn, or actually he's more realistic and you're overdoing it? That's really what we'd like to know. And frankly, the bugaboo here is that this could just come down to opinion. You very well could. You're protecting the right type of things. It's totally okay to be concerned about these people that are around you. Whether the risks that this, because it was weird how she framed it, because she said he's practicing even though he doesn't have any gigs. Wouldn't the fact that he had gigs make this worse for the thing that you're bothered with?
Yeah, and the guy that he is practicing with does have gigs, so he goes out into the world and does. This is the problem with having a completely fear-based approach. Like, if you believe all this to be true, if the number one thing on your list and his list, if you both agree that COVID-19 is to be avoided at all costs, and the best route for our family is to lock down, then him having practices with people outside of that, I'm assuming without a mask on or vaccination or whatever you would help mitigate that situation in your mind, then yeah, I could see how you feel betrayed here, right? Like if you both agreed that like this is what we're going to do, we both feel the same way. What it sounds like to me is he doesn't actually feel the same way as you. And that's actually what you're upset about, is you are very worried about the effects of the virus, and he is a little bit more laissez-faire about it, and you're upset at him because it feels like he doesn't care about the things that you care about. And so that's a much different problem than him just merely having band practice, I think. It sounds like he has acquiesced to everything you've asked, but this thing he's not willing. He's just not willing to put it on the table, because it does not make sense to say we need to avoid being exposed to other people at all costs in case of COVID transmission, and then for him to go ahead and have band practice with people who are out free roaming the world and licking others. Right. So like that seems disingenuous. So either he doesn't believe the same thing that you do, and he's just been trying to be nice and join you in the thing that you're concerned with, and now you've come to a crossroads where he doesn't actually feel that way. Yeah. And it's obvious in his actions. This is where actions are speaking way louder than words here. Mm-hmm. So I don't think we can actually talk to whether you're overreacting or underreacting or whatever. It seems like we've just said you guys have to agree on something this big in your life, right? Deciding whether you get to go out and be in the world or you have to clamp down and quarantine. You really have to agree with somebody on that you live with.
Yeah, there's no compromise.
Right. It has to be one or the other. Whatever decision you've come to in your house or whatever's best for your household because of whatever situations, the two of you who live in the house have to agree. Mm-hmm. And that's pretty much the long and short of it. And it sounds like you don't. So you might have to sever your living together arrangements.
Yeah, I mean, that's extreme enough that like when he says, if we don't agree on this thing, he might leave. He may have to. Because you've not left any particular room for compromise in here. Mm-hmm. Like you've set it up in such a way, right or wrong, that like either you're willing to completely lock down and we're together, or you're in a violation of my trust and an over-round jerkface, and we should be apart.
Yeah, because you can't say, I believe lockdown is the greatest, is what we should do. It's the most responsible thing, and that's what we're going to do. And then go, it's not my problem whether those guys go out and about. I'm just having practice with them. You know full well they're going out and about. Mm-hmm. And so you can't actually believe the thing that you're saying. You can't, that's way too narrow of a view. And so, yeah, like I said, I don't know I whether we agree or disagree on whatever decisions they've made. They do have to make them together, and he is violating that. That is true. And so I think probably the best result for you is to say we need to not live together, either until the threat of the cove passes, or we can find some ground in which we both agree on how life should be lived.
Yeah.
Especially because you're boyfriend and girlfriend. You are totally, you shouldn't be doing this anyway. And these are the type of things that will come out of that. Yeah. Secular says, if you are deeply worried about the safety of your medically fragile relatives, as you have stated, you should end the relationship. Josh may need to practice with his bandmates so they don't replace him. He cannot be responsible for their behavior, and for you to expect him to be is unrealistic. Now, I agree with that, actually.
Yeah.
Although he is responsible for their behavior because he knows that they're not quarantining like you are.
Yeah, I mean, he's responsible for his association with them. Like
Sure.
Yeah. Let's do one more.
Okay, one more. I gotta make sure it's a good one. No selfish bride. We're not talking about that. That one seems lame. No. Sorry, I didn't have a third one ready to go. My wife's fight with cancer? No. Aversion to pets? Yeah. Pet aversion. That's what we want. Dear Life from the Path. My boyfriend and I have gotten engaged and we are being married in a year or so. Everything about him is wonderful, and I'm excited to share my life with him, except for one worry. I have been an animal lover my entire life. After living with him this past year with my 2 cats, I have slowly come to the realization that he absolutely loathes the idea of pets. Besides my inability to understand this, he has never had a bad past experience with an animal. It makes me question his compassion, or lack thereof, for all things living. Should this be a red flag worthy of reconsidering our engagement?
Well, he's been cohabitating with her and her cats.
Yeah.
I mean, so I guess he's compromised a little bit his hatred. I guess you have to decide how important it really is to you. You might be incompatible, but
I mean, if he doesn't love them the way you love them, is that the requirement?
Yeah, you need to give him a little grace there. It's like
If he tolerates them, like he doesn't kick them and he feeds them if they need food or whatever, but he doesn't just sit with a big
cuddle with them.
beaming smile on his face, petting them and scratching their ears and knowing they're picadillos, right?
Yeah.
If that's not him, can you be okay with that?
Right. I mean, maybe you don't like cars like he does, or whatever his thing is,
Or action movies,
Yeah,
or
yeah.
sweatpants.
I mean,
This is basically your whole marriage coming up, right?
Yeah, right.
There's just going to be things that he's not trying to stop you from doing it. He's allowing you to have pets and not saying this is a deal ender for me. But you're basically saying if he doesn't love pets the way that I do, then I think I don't know if I'm compatible with him. I feel like that's a really narrow thought process.
Yeah. And you really have to decide how important is that to you. I mean, if it might be a deal breaker, it wouldn't be for me. I mean, I'd just be like, okay, I guess we're not doing cats.
Yeah,
but that's me. I like cats, but it's not going to be the deal breaker for me. But if it really, really, really is important to her, then she has to really weigh that. I mean,
did we say? Sorry, I was doing some technical problems. To just ask him?
Yeah. Well, it seems like they've had the conversation. How does she know he really doesn't like him?
Well, I mean, can you say, look, man, I'm not giving up the cats. Is this a deal breaker for you or what?
I mean,
and I want another one when they're gone.
Do you think it's the fact that like a guy doesn't like animals, then it should be called into question his compassion or lack thereof for all things living? That's a real nut and granola thing to say.
In fact, she should say that to him so he knows what he's getting into.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think you hate all of life.
Right, because I don't like cats, or I don't like your 2 cats, or 1 cat, or... Yeah. I mean, there's a real difference between a guy that's like, hey, would you feed a starving cat in the road? Sure. Would you adopt them in your house? No, I don't want them here. Right? Like, there's all kinds of good I want for other people and other living things that I don't necessarily want living with me all the time.
I don't want an animal pooping in my house. It's got a little sandbox, great, but I don't want to change it.
Right, and I don't know that he owes you an explanation of a past trauma with pets to explain it. Some people just don't want the added responsibility of pets.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, there's practical advice here too, right? Like, if you have pets, that means you're tied to your house. You got to go back home and feed them. You got to let them out, or you got to find someone to do it if you ever want to go out of town. Right. That's not a hatred for pets. I just don't want the extra hassle.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It feels like you might be really over cranking here. Or you're just very young.
Yeah. I think I would be real careful if I were this guy, like, because either she really feels this way, and I don't know, that seems like that might be lightning rod in your relationship, or 2, she doesn't feel this way, but she's really overblowing it to try to guilt you into doing something you don't want to do, and you don't want to be anywhere near that either.
Yeah. I mean, I don't like decorations. I don't like flowers and small things on shelves. I just don't like it. If it was up to me, we would have 0 of those.
Yeah, right.
My wife likes them. They require responsibility. You have to dust them, and sometimes they break, and sometimes we got to get more. And if I would literally go my whole life with having 0 decorations in my whole house. Is that enough for me to go? My wife and I are incompatible.
Right.
If I don't love decorations the way she does, there's
She
no
hates all
possible
things
way
beautiful.
we can live together. That's right. I don't appreciate art or random things from swap meets or whatever. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, agreed.
Okay, Secular says, so her question was, should this be a red flag worthy of reconsidering our engagement? Secular says, perhaps. Not everyone is an animal lover, but it's usually because they haven't had pets or been exposed to them. I disagree.
Yeah.
This does not mean they lack compassion for all things living. It simply means they haven't interacted with different species. However, you say your fiancé absolutely loathes pets. If you plan to have animals in your household in the future, you must have some serious discussions about it and lay your cards on the table. If you don't deal with this now, it could be a deal breaker in the future. Yeah, after 7 years of marriage, I go, you know what? These pets, I can't deal with it
This is the
anymore.
end of the line.
You're all
Yeah.
out.
I see that we have children and have memories and an increasing bond of through responsibility and shared experiences, but that cat, no longer.
I have no compassion on parakeets or any like animal.
I mean, here's the thing. Are we really ranking pets as more important than a human? Are we saying that, like, everything that, like, you've agreed to marry the man, you've seen enough in him and your future and gone, yes, we will spend our lives together as one, except for when this pet situation comes up. Are you willing to get rid of the pets on his behalf as much as you're asking him to be willing to take the pets in?
Yeah.
Because it seems like a really one-sided argument here.
Yeah. I think she's shining it on. I think he probably do. I think he would prefer not to have the pet, but he hasn't left yet. You know what I'm saying? Like, where we have every opportunity to bail, and he's not done it in the presence of these cats. It just feels like she's over-representing as an attempt to make herself look great. Because, like, he's cartoonishly hateful of animals.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Agreed.
All right. You're listening to Live from the Path. Thanks for hanging out with us so far tonight. I can't remember. Did we get the secular advice?
Yeah.
Okay. I don't think we have anything else going on. We're going to cut you loose. If you got any feedback for us on the show, you can always use that email, info@livefromthepath.org, or the complaint line, 515-517-0085, the Bob Eisenhower Live from the Path complaint line. Call or text 515-517-0085. We do thank you so much for hanging out with us tonight, and we will see you next time. In the meantime, be faithful to the means. God will handle the ends. You've been listening to Live from the Path.